Hello and welcome to Talking Brains. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Sarkis, author of Gaslighting, Recognize the Manipulative and Emotionally Abusive People and Break Free. You'll find me at stephaniesarkis.com. So I'm going to read an article that I wrote for Psychology Today about when is a relationship quote-unquote bad enough, leaving a gaslighter, how to decide whether it's time to cut and run. I've had several readers ask me after reading 11 Warning Signs of Gaslighting or reading the book, how many characteristics of gaslighting does a partner need to have before it's time to leave for good? What if it's just one or two? What if it's not all of them and maybe just some? And I'm going to get a little bit into the different warning signs of a gaslighter. And then also we'll talk about when is it time to go, because leaving a gaslighter can be extremely difficult for people, especially when the gaslighters warped your sense of reality and made you feel like you have to be dependent on them. So first we're going to go through different signs of a gaslighter. So one, they tell blatant lies. They tell lies sometimes for no reason other than just lie. Two, they deny they ever said something, even though you have proof. This classic hand in the cookie jar. They say that they weren't saying or doing something that you swear happened, but then you start questioning your sanity. Three, they use what's near and dear to you as ammunition. They will ask you deeply personal questions, like, for instance, why you and a family member don't get along, or why you have a certain behavior and you get into some past stuff and it feels like you're building up emotional intimacy, but the gaslighter doesn't give you emotional intimacy back. And what they do is that information they give you, they will use it against you in fights. Like they'll say things like, well, now I know why you and your sister don't get along, or now I know why you lost that job, or whatever it is. So they will use that as ammunition. They'll use any guilt that you have about parenting as ammunition too. They'll say, well, no wonder your kid blah, 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 because this. And it's usually something that you've told them that you feel guilty about or you feel uncomfortable about. So again, they don't ask you personal questions as a way to build emotional intimacy. They use it as a way to collect information. So four, they wear you down over time. So we've talked about before, the gaslighters will do something called love bombing, where the first time you go out with them, everything's super great, and they tell you how much they love you, and you're wonderful, and you're the best thing ever happened to them. And it's too good to be true. And if something's too good to be true, it usually is. So what happens is once they know that they've got you in their grasp, they will start introducing gaslighting behaviors. Again, like lying to you, not being faithful, telling you that what you're doing is wrong. So they put you up on a pedestal and then you fall off that pedestal and it's a really, really far way down. So again, they wear you down over time. And again, this is slow. So it's not something that you think about happening really quickly. This is something that builds up over time. So it's a little thing here and a little thing there. And this person's very good in the public at making it look like they don't have any issues. So when you go to someone and say, hey, I'm having some issues in my relationship, they're like, how could you? This person's so nice. There's no way that they could do that stuff. Because again, they're really good at putting up a false front to everyone else. And they also are very good at, again, wearing you down over time and doing it slowly. So before you realize it, you're in a very unhealthy situation. Also, their actions do not match their words. When a gaslighter knows that you're leaving, they will do one of two things. They'll either just, block you completely out of their life because they've also been seeing someone on the side and they'll pick up their relationship with that person. Or if it's a family member, they will, not speak to you ever again. Or what gaslighters will also do is they will try to get back in your good graces or get you back into their fold because they want to get the narcissistic attention. So because they're kind of this bottomless pit of need and nothing fills that except the person that left. So, but you'll never be able to fill the narcissist or gaslighter's bottomless pit of need anyway. But they will tell you that this time it's going to be different, and they'll never really say they're sorry, but they'll say, well, if you come back, things will be great, and things were great, and you'll never find anybody like me. And then as soon as you get back together with them, then the bad behavior starts up again. So also, always pay attention to what the gaslighters do, not what they say, because they can promise you the world, but they almost always never fully deliver on it. So also they throw in positive reinforcement to confuse you. This is one of the trickiest things about gaslighters is that they're not bad all the time. They have moments where they use positive reinforcement, but it's not out of the kindness of their hearts, it's usually to get you to do something. There's an ulterior motive to it. And again, it's tough when, you have someone that you get along with, 30% of the time, when 70% of the time they are doing crazy behavior. And my feeling is, if you have a relationship that's great 95% of the time, but 5% of the time it's emotionally abusive, such as what gaslighters do, it's still an abusive relationship. So keep that in mind. Also, they know confusion weakens people. So they will change their stance on something back and forth, back and forth. If you finally agree with them on something, they'll change their topic just to see if you'll follow, just to know how much of a pull they have or control they have over you. They also will kind of kick your argument back at you. So if you say, I really don't like the way you're doing this, and this is why, they'll say, but you've done that before, and you're pretty sure you haven't done that thing before, but they make it sound like you have. And again, they're very good at convincing people, so very manipulative. So again, they will try to confuse you as to make you feel like you don't know what reality is. So also they project. So they'll tell you that you're selfish. They'll tell you that that you don't pay enough attention to them, when in fact it's you that doesn't get full attention, because the gaslighter is constantly asking you, or in other ways trying to get you to put all their focus on them. So again, they project, which means they have a certain characteristic, but they accuse you of having that characteristic. For instance, like infidelity, they are notorious cheaters, gaslighters, and so what they'll do is that they'll accuse you of cheating, to the point where they'll tell you, well, I know that you came home from work late because you're sleeping with so-and-so. And they'll take your phone and they'll look through it. And they'll say, well, I have proof. And they really don't have any proof. And the fact is actually that they're cheating. But the reason why they do is they want to take the focus off their own behavior and put it on you, so that you are distracted from the bad behavior they're having. So also, they try to align people against you. So they'll tell other people that they think you're crazy. They'll tell you that other people think you're crazy. They'll tell you that, well, if you leave and you tell people, about me, they aren't going to believe you anyway. Who are they going to believe, me or you? Because again, a lot of these people have standing in the community, and they look, pretty good to the outside world. They look good on paper, so to speak. So again, they'll align people against you. They try to align you against people. So they'll say, well, your sister said this about you. Now, usually your sisters never say anything of the sort, but they want you to get in a fight with your sister, because that way, who are you going to rely on more now for support? You're going to rely more on the gaslighter than your sister. So they see anyone that you rely on for support as a threat. And keep that in mind, because that's part of the gaslighter's MO, modus operandi, is that they try to get you to focus all your attention on them, to get all your support, emotional support from them. Also, they tell you or others that you're crazy. We just talked about that. Again, the idea is that they're trying to make it so that if you try to leave, that you'll feel like you don't really have any resources, so you're more likely to stay. Also, they tell you everyone else is a liar. This is a convenient way to get them, for them to get you into their fold again. Well, this person isn't being honest with you. They told you they saw me out with someone, and, they are a total liar, and they're a compulsive liar. And again, that's projection, because the gaslighter is actually once a liar. So those are the 11 signs of a gaslighter. That I wrote about that on Psychology Today, in my article, 11 warning signs of gaslighting, and also in my book, Gaslighting. So again, I have people email me and they say, well, what if my partner only meets one or two of these? What if he meets some of them but not all of them? And again, keep in mind that gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse, and abuse should never be tolerated in a relationship. But, it's not as simple as that, because gaslighters will work on your self-esteem and erode it. And by doing that, they also erode your ability to make decisions. That can mean making the decisions to leave seems almost impossible. And also, keep in mind, too, the most lethal time in a relationship that's abusive is when you're leaving, or if you've just left. So even if you have one item on this list that I just read to you that you're finding is existing in a relationship, it's an unhealthy relationship. And again, these 11 things are forms of emotional abuse. So think about that a little bit, and think about whether this is something that, usually these relationships don't get better, they just get worse. If you feel like you're in a situation where your safety is at risk, then contact your local domestic violence services There's also a national domestic violence hotline that you can contact. So please get help for that. And it's the National Domestic Violence Hotline is thehotline.org, and it's 800-799-7233. Because again, the most lethal time or dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when you're leaving or you have just left. So again, these relationships tend to not get better. And even if you have one of these characteristics, it's a red flag. So also, just keep in mind what your personal values are. So consider your personal values about the 11 gaslighting characteristics I mentioned. And for example, it may not seem like a big deal to you when your partner's actions don't match their words, while, if they're telling people that you're crazy, that may be a deal breaker for you. So it may be the opposite for someone else. You may tell someone else, well, whatever, their actions don't match their words, but I can live with that. But your friend may be like, are you crazy? That would totally drive me nuts. So we all have different kind of lines in the sand for people in our relationships. But, let your family and friends know what your line in the sand is. And when I mean that, let them know what your limits are in a relationship. Because what they'll do is that when you are experiencing someone's gaslighting, crossing those limits, your friends and family remind you, I remember when you told me that you said that if this person called you a name that you were going to be out the door. So they've done that. So, but you're still there. So we need to talk. So I think that when you tell someone what your limits are, again, someone that's trustworthy, friends or family, I think they'll really kind of keep you in check when you say, well, things aren't that bad, because they just did this one time. Well, you could have your friends or family say, well, what you told me is if they did this one time, you'd be out. So let's talk. And that, I think, holds you accountable for keeping your boundaries in place. Because again, the gaslighter, their biggest thing they do is try to erode your boundaries. So also, what's your partner's intent? And we've talked about before, there's two different kinds of gaslighters. There's gaslighters that have sociopathy, sociopathic behaviors. They are narcissists, and they do this stuff on purpose. They do it to see how much control they can get over someone. They get they get off on getting control over people. So that, or, sometimes there's gaslighters that they do the behavior because they grew up with gaslighting parents, and they found out that, or they learned erroneously that that's how you are in a relationship. So keep that in mind, that sometimes it's just the way someone is in a relationship. It could be something that they learned. Now, if it's something that they've learned and they're willing to admit that, I've got some issues, I need to get help for those, and they go in and get counseling, that's a really good sign. Doesn't mean everything's okay yet, but if someone is a narcissist or sociopath, what they'll say to you is, I'm not the one with the problem, you're the one with the problem. Or maybe they'll go to couples therapy with you, but they'll tell the therapist that you're the entire problem and that the therapist should fix you. That's a huge red flag. So narcissists and sociopaths have something called an egocentric personality. And what that means is that they think everyone else is crazy and they're fine. Those people tend to not get help. And in the field of psychology, people that have personality disorders like narcissism, antisocial personality disorder, also known as sociopathy, that tends to be seen as very hard to treat and very hard to recover from. So keep that in mind. So is it something where you and your partner are willfully working at making your communication improve? Because this isn't about poor communication, it's more about control. Or does this seem like something that your partner is purposely doing? So I've written a series on Psychology Today called Is It Gaslighting or Bad Communication? I'll probably turn that into a podcast. But again, is it gaslighting? Is it bad communication? And again, gaslighting is about power manipulation, not so much about just having poor communication. So look at what your partner's intent is. So, and also, again, just be aware that any kind of abuse, emotional abuse, escalates, and that it's more likely to have physical and verbal abuse when you have emotional abuse already happening. And also, this is kind of scary statistic. That's so hard to say. Every minute in the United States, 24 people are raped, stalked, or physically attacked by their partner. And that's from the U.S. Department of Justice. This is a 2008 stat. So again, if you're experiencing domestic violence, and again, gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse, contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and it's thehotline.org, and the phone number is 1-800-799-7233. 7233. And also keep in mind, too, that children witnessed domestic violence in 22% of cases filed in state courts, with an additional 14% of kids that were present during domestic violence incidents but did not witness them. That's also from the U.S. DOJ, Department of Justice. And also be aware that kids who witness domestic violence or are present in the home during domestic violence incidents are 15 times more likely to be physically or sexually assaulted. So, and that's a statistic from UNICEF in 2006. So your kids may be at risk for also being abused. So keep that in mind. Also, your pets are at risk for being abused. So when you contact the National Domestic Hotline, domestic violence hotline, talk to them about, you have a pet in the home and that's a big concern of yours. Some shelters will accept pets, some won't. But you usually do not want to ever leave your pet alone with someone that's been abusive to you. Now, then I have some people say, well, what if I've had some of these behaviors? So, yeah, this person's been really, emotionally manipulative and abusive to me, but, I've kind of turned it on them sometimes because I'm just tired of it. And am I just as guilty? Now, my feeling is that if you've engaged in one of the behaviors as a response to a gaslighter, that doesn't mean that the gaslighting behaviors your partner's done are acceptable. So, nor did you deserve to be treated like that in any way, shape, or forms. Sometimes people in relationships with gaslighters will take on characteristics of the gaslighter as a way to quote unquote beat them at their own game. However, the gaslighter will always win with their manipulation and guilt tactics. So if you feel you have some gaslighting behaviors, talk to a mental health professional about that. He or she can help you discover if you're just responding to the gaslighter's behaviors or if it's a deeper pattern of behavior that you may need to really get in depth with really some self-discovery. So also there's a chapter in my gaslighting book on what to do if you discover if you have gaslighting characteristics. There's different types of therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's acceptance and commitment therapy, dialectical behavior therapy. And again, quite a few people have been in a relationship with gaslighters find themselves engaging in those behaviors at some point because they feel like it's the only way to kind of fight back. But again, you'll never win a battle with a gaslighter because they will always turn stuff around on you. So I'm going to go back over the 11 characteristics again of a gaslighter. Again, these are not the only ones, but these are the ones that are more common. They tell blatant lies. They deny they ever said something, even though you have proof. They use what's near and dear to you as ammunition. They wear you down over time. Their actions don't match their words. They throw in positive reinforcement to confuse you. They know confusion weakens people. They project. They try to line people against you. They tell you or others that you're crazy, and they tell you everyone else is a liar. Again, it's not the whole list, but these are 11 of the most common ones that I've seen from people that come in to see me in therapy. So if you've answered yes to even one of those occurring in your relationship, it's important to really take a look at what other signs of gaslighting may exist. And again, this is a form of emotional abuse, and it should be treated as such, that this is an abusive relationship. And abusive behavior is never acceptable. So I know that if you're in this relationship and you're really hard thinking about leaving because you may be to a point where you're terrified about leaving, and I think that's a very valid feeling, and I would contact someone that is supportive of you, friends or family, and maybe reconnect with some of those people that the gaslighter told you were saying bad things about you because it may not even be true. Chances are it probably wasn't. They just know that that person's your ally and they wanted you to kind of not have that resource available. So reconnect with some people. And again, the best way to deal with the gaslighters is by not being around them anymore. And again, it's easier said than done because if you've built up a relationship with a gaslighter, it can be really hard to leave. Again, especially if they've really worked at belittling you and ruining your self-esteem. So again, I would contact someone, talk it out, go see a mental health professional. There are community mental health centers that will see you for sliding scale. That's where you pay based on your income, or they'll see you pro bono or at no charge. But again, the best option is just to get out of this type of relationship because it is so harmful to you and your kids and your pets. So this has been the Talking Brains podcast. I'm Dr. Stephanie Sarkis. If you could please give me a rating or also leave a comment about the podcast, I'd really appreciate it. And again, my book's Gaslighting, Recognize Manipulative and Emotionally Abusive People and Break Free. You can see the written version of this podcast on Psychology Today. I also post a version of this on the blog as well. And again, stephaniesarkis.com. And thank you very much. And I will talk to you next podcast.